we generally start with behaviors that exist in the organization and things that are not aspirational, but things are that.
Welcome to the Live Greater View, a financial planning podcast produced by VLP Financial Advisors that discusses life, money, and perspective. We help clients live their best life at every stage through our VLP Live Greater partnership process. Thank you for tuning in. All right, so we got a great topic today. We'd like to welcome Bill Hueter. Bill, you're going to talk a little bit about Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. So it'd be great if you give a little background about what you do, how you got to your career path, and how you got to this point.
Wow, my career path is long and circuitous. I actually started out life in the world of music. I was a music education major. I thought I was going to teach high school choral music. I ended up going into public radio and television, did that for quite a long time. And I felt this itch, this urge to be my own boss, to do my own thing, to strike out on my own. So started a company that was related to music education, audio and video publishing. That was my first business. And then went on from there. My second business was where I spent the most time, had the greatest success. In between those and around those were other types of business that I worked on, more in the corporate world, Anderson Consulting, Deloitte Consulting, et cetera, but became an EOS implementer because in our second business, of which I was a partner, we implemented EOS. We started the company and we got about 7-8 years into it and got stuck. We hit a ceiling. We didn't know how to get unstuck. So we found EOS, implemented EOS, and in the next 5 years, we quickly broke through a ceiling and took us to almost twice in terms of revenue and profit where we were when we started, and ended up selling to private equity. And I said, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? I became an EOS implementer because I wanted to do for others what had been done for me. And so that's how I am where I am.
What a great story. And for disclosure, you are our EOS implementer. You've been helping VLP with our path and our track on EOS. Fabulous. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what EOS stands for? Obviously, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, but what that means and how it helps business owners achieve their vision.
Yeah, EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, is a simple set of tools and disciplines that helps owners and leadership teams of entrepreneurial companies get everything that they want from their business. And so typically clients say to me, or potential clients say to me, well, what does that mean in terms of, what do you consider an entrepreneurial company, or how big do I have to be? Entrepreneurial companies generally of no less than 10 employees, no more than 250 is the target market. That's the demographic. The geographic is Baltimore, Washington is my home territory. I actually take clients outside of that on a exception basis. That's the demographic. That's the geographic. It's the psychographic that makes all the difference. And you, VLP, are a great example of that. You got to feel stuck. You got to be entrepreneurial in spirit. You got to want to get somewhere. You got to feel like we're not sure that we're getting there. You got to be open to a better way. And you got to be open and honest and willing to be vulnerable. And companies that are like you, are like that, are the companies that become clients and make more progress more quickly.
And then sometimes it's a crossroad, right? We were at a crossroad, a change of leadership, and looking for an opportunity to really get the new team up and running, which has been fabulous for us as a result. So when did you first start helping entrepreneurs implement the EOS?
It was 6 years ago when we had sold the previous company, and I'm a very fortunate guy. I found myself in a place for the first time in life where I didn't need a paycheck, but I wasn't going to go play golf for the rest of my life. And I'm certainly not going to sit around the house. I didn't realize how type A I was until a few months into this change in my work pattern. I realized that I really need something. I am driven. So I did a little bit of consulting, and this whole idea of how EOS had changed my life and our business just kept gnawing at me and kept becoming clearer and clearer to me. And I said, okay, maybe I need to look into this whole becoming an EOS implementer, myself thing. It's turning the tables. It's sitting on the other side of the table instead of the side of the table of the leadership team. It's the being the teacher, the coach, and the facilitator. So I looked into it, and I thought, I hope I have what it takes. I went to EOS school, and I've been doing it for I'm in my 6th year, and it is far and away the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life, in my professional life.
Fabulous.
Awesome. So I know this is could be a long answer, but and there's many tools in the toolbox that EOS provides. But can you give us a little rundown of how does EOS, the model, work, and what are some of the things that, if you're applying them, lead to those successes that you're seeing with your clients?
Yeah, so I think that the best way to explain the tools is to take the simple approach first, which is, what does EOS address? It addresses a company's ability to create one common vision, create traction on that vision, and raise the health of the company. So with those as the areas of focus and the broadest, highest level goals, the tools that do that, there are more than 20 tools in the EOS toolbox, but as you know, the foundational tools, and the ones that people probably have heard of, are things like the level 10 meeting. And the level 10 meeting is the weekly meeting that starts off at the leadership team level and eventually gets rolled out to the rest of the company. The major aspects of that level 10 meeting are that there's a check-in every week on a scorecard, which are the most important things that need to get measured every single week, the most important activities that need to get measured every single week. A check-in on the rocks, which are the goals for the quarter. And the third big part in the level 10 meeting is issue solving, something we call IDS, identify, discuss, solve, which is a simple way of solving your issues so that they go away forever. So the level 10 meeting is sort of table stakes in getting started. The other tools, the other foundational tools, are the accountability chart. Almost every company has an organizational chart. And what we do is we come at the chart from an accountability point of view. What are the roles? What are the functions? Who's accountable to whom? It creates simplicity and clarity. Titles get taken off, and simple functions and roles get applied. And the other tool that is basic to EOS, early on, the foundational tools, is the Vision Traction Organizer, and that's the part where, as we walked through more than 2 years ago, we determined 8 things about where you as a company were going and continue to go. And those 8 things are: what are your core values? What is your core focus? What is your 10-year target? What is your 3-year picture? What is your 1-year plan? And what are your quarterly rocks? The last 2 parts of that are: what are your issues to solve and get out of the way, to get to your so that you achieve your quarterly rocks and achieve your 1-year plan, to achieve your 3-year picture, to move towards your 10-year target. And the other part of the VTO is, what is your market strategy? And very simply, it's who are you talking to and what are you saying to them? So that's a quick overview of the foundational tools. Then there's all of what we call the other tools in the toolbox, and that may be a different conversation for a different time.
So, as an EOS implementer, who would you say is an ideal candidate? What companies do you see get the most out of implementing EOS and having an implementer help them through that process?
Yeah, it's back to what I said before. It's that openness and honesty and vulnerability. Um, a- Most companies want to do better, want to achieve something more, but they get stuck. And one of the things that they get stuck on is that they can't solve their issues. And one of the reasons they can't solve their issues is because they're not willing to be open and honest and vulnerable. And you as a team are great at that. I've never really felt any major holdbacks to say, look, this is an issue. And if it gores my ox, I'm gonna be vulnerable in front of you. Rose, if it gores Dan's ox, I'm sorry, I'm going to call it out, because for the greater good of the company, we've got to solve this. We've got to get past this. Let's understand what everybody is thinking and feeling about this, and let's get to a solve, and let's move on. And that's the companies, my clients that make the most progress most quickly are the ones that are more that way. They're more open and honest and vulnerable. The tools are not hard to understand. Just like somebody in a seat on the accountability chart, you got to get the tools, you got to want the tools, and you got to have the capacity to do the tools. Get it, not hard. Capacity to do it, you just have to make the time. It's the want it part. Got to want it. And the ones that want it the most, even if they make progress slower than another client, they do it in a more thorough way, and it's more satisfying to them and to me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really drew us to EOS was getting our business plan boiled down to that 2-page document, right? It was clear. We had to spend a lot of time. We had to be a lot of open and honest. And one of the things I thought was really interesting when we started the process is you said, which stuck with us, was not everybody who starts this journey will be at the end of this journey. There'll be change. And we felt that. We had some change. So can you go into a little bit of what some of the hurdles that you see when you're implementing? What are some of the common hurdles that teams face as they're doing this implementation, as they go through this change?
It's thinking in a new way. If there's ego in the organization, that's a hurdle, because the accountability chart that we create is not about title. It's about function. And it may be that somebody is right for the organization, but they're in the wrong seat. And sometimes that is a difficult transition. And it may be that there are people that are not right for the organization, that they get and want and have the capacity to do their job, but their core values don't match the organization. And that's something that over time needs to be ferreted out. So at the heart of everything, at the heart of all progress and all of these tools and all of the joy of working together with people, not just me and a client, but you together as a leadership team, and you with the rest of the company, is right people, right seat. When everybody in the organization is by EOS definition right person, which means they have a common they commonly live the core values of the company, and everybody is right seat, which means that everybody gets and wants and has the capacity to do the 5 most important roles in their function, which is their job, then everything is possible. I have the longer I am an EOS implementer, the more clear it is to me that 100% right people, right seat as soon as possible, and on an accountability chart that is clear and looks 6 to 12 months out is 75% of the ball game. When you've got that, everything else is possible.
So you mentioned a few times, so let's talk a little bit about core values, because core values really drives that right person, right fit. And then the accountability chart, which is the jobs and function, really is the right seat. So the time and effort it takes to really establish what is the company's core values is probably like the most important, one of the most important steps of this process.
There's a 3-step process to do it. There are nuances in the steps, but the the first thing that I love telling clients that sometimes is it's a revelation for some of them, and that is that you already have a culture, right? You have a culture, and what we're going to do is step one is we're going to extract the best aspects of the best people out of your culture. So core values. Well, let me take a step back. What are core values? You know, core values are behaviors and things that people share in common, whether that's in your personal life or you're in your business life. So how do we get there? We first of all we tease out the best behaviors of your best people, right? Then we put those through a series of filters, and the filters have to do with making sure that the values are more unique to your organization. It's not something that every organization says that they want, says that they have. We take we it's a bit of a word salad. We get all these words up on the board, and then we take the combines out and we get it down. We generally start with behaviors that exist in the organization and things that are not aspirational, but things that actually are attainable for the organization. Behaviors that are attainable. We start with 40, sometimes 50 words or very, very short phrases, and we end up with anywhere between 3 and 7. And when we do this exercise, I always, like everything else in EOS, it's always keep it simple, right? If you can get it down to 3 to 5, I think that's better than 7, because from that point forward, that those 3 to 7 words become the definition of right person in the organization, and there is a minimum expectation of behavior to those core values. So if you have 7 versus 5, it's easier to live up to, I think it's easier to live up to 5 core values or 4 core values than it is 6 or 7. So as in all things in life and in EOS, keep it simple, do less better.
Absolutely.
So you start out in the process with the core values. What are the next additional steps that you go through with initially with new clients of here's what this EOS process looks like? What are those next things? First it's core values, then it's X. And you and I and Rose, we all know what those terminology means because we've read Traction, and we will mention that here a little bit later. But what are some of those next steps that you go through in that process?
Well, so the work that I do is with the leadership team, not just the owner and not the entire company. It's the leadership team. And the leadership team, we start on what we call Focus Day. And the leadership team is the visionary. Who should be at Focus Day? It should be the visionary, if there is one in the company, the integrator, and the integrator is the person to whom the leadership team is accountable, and everybody that is accountable to the leadership team. Generally speaking, that's no less than 3 people. Sometimes it's as much as 7 or 8. So that's who's at Focus Day. And in Focus Day, we learn the basic tools that create traction. It's a traction first, vision second approach. Vision comes later. We start creating traction by creating that accountability chart. The accountability chart is functions and roles, where we look 6 to 12 months out and put everyone aside and say, what is the best and right structure looking 6 to 12 months out? Create that structure in an accountability chart, and then we put the right people into those seats. That's how we start. And then I teach the level 10 meeting agenda and rocks, and we set the first rocks, which are the goals for the next 60 days. After that, it's every 90 days. We create we take a first pass at the scorecard, which is those weekly measurables, things that the activities that have to get measured every week, that if anything were off track, it would drive you to what we'll call drive you off the island. If you were on an island and you got a scorecard dropped on you, and something that you were accountable for was off track, it would drive you back to the office to find the issue, solve it, and get it back on track. So scorecard, level 10 meeting, set the first rocks, and and so that's the foundational tools in focus day. Then 30 days later, we start the vision building, and that's the first of two vision building days. 30 days after focus day. The other one is 30 days after that day, vision building day 2. And that's when we go step by step through the vision traction organizer, the core values, setting those core values, setting the core focus, setting the 10-year target, setting the market strategy, setting the 3-year picture, setting the 1-year plan, and then resetting quarterly rocks, which we had set 60 days ago. And from there on, it's every 90 days. So the first 3 sessions, I'm sure you remember, are those. It's just foundational. It just sets everything that comes. There's a lot, excuse me, there's a lot of learning that goes on. And then after that, it's more execution. There's learning that happens after that, but it's more executional, repetition of execution to create excellence.
Yeah. And in this process, you've been through it multiple times, obviously doing this 6 years, and we didn't mention how many clients you've worked with, but it's well over a dozen, I suspect, at this point. And for those people who might be listening to this, or who are listening and thinking about, oh, this is interesting, I've maybe read Traction, I'm thinking about this. What do you see some of the most challenges in this early part of the process? One, being open and honest, obviously, you might get people who aren't, and so that can create a challenge. But is there a particular point in the early part of that process that you say, I see regular challenges there, or is it just depends on the firm?
So I think I'm somewhere around 60 clients at this point, and
Wow.
and I hate to sound repetitive, but it really does come back to what's in their hearts, and are they willing to be open, which means to listen, and not and then honest, which is to say what's inside, don't hold back, and willing to be vulnerable, which is to say, I don't understand, I need help, I'm lost, not just in the EOS process, but with regard to their job every day. When the companies that make the least amount of progress early on are the ones that are more guarded. They're more concerned about their territory or their ego or their image in front of their peers. It's rare that gets to a point where the implementation either just doesn't work or stops for some reason. Companies tend to self-select into EOS. Open and honest, that we're now at 230 some thousand companies over 25 years that have implemented EOS in some way. About 90% of those, some of the tools of EOS, about 90% of those companies self-implement. So I think there's a self-selection process of companies that actually start the process and buy Traction and go the do-it-yourself route. They self-implement. Only about 10% of those hire, an implementer like me that has lived EOS and has trained in EOS. And I think that's even a higher level of self-selection. I think they're even more driven, more willing to be open and honest and vulnerable. And so the punch out rate, what I call the punch out rate for companies that have those qualities and those desires that become clients are, I think it's pretty small.
Interesting. So now that they've gone through the process, are there certain things that you would consider success, for a client, and what are they attaining certain benchmarks, or going through their rocks and things like that? Of here's where I really think they're getting it, they they're implementing it correctly, because as you said, some are implementing it on their own without your knowledge or any other implementers. Is there that aha point, or that you have, or maybe even the client has, where the light goes off and they go, yeah, okay, this is working?
Yeah, at a micro level, as you well know, the goals the early on, as early on as possible, the goals you want to achieve are completing 80% of your rocks every quarter, 80% or better, getting 90% of your to-dos done every week, which are things that get assigned to you as a result of issues solving. Those are basic early marks to look for in the big picture. And you know this because we've just gotten to a level of graduation with you. In the big picture, the goal of every EOS implementer is to get their client, have the client rate themselves as 80+% strong in what we call the 6 key components. And the 6 key components are the vision component, to get everybody to see, believe, and articulate one common vision. And by the way, this is 80%, that the leadership team rates for the entire company. The vision component, the people component, that's making sure that you're 100% right people, right seats. The data component, which is running the company on hard, cold facts and figures, having that weekly scorecard. The issues component, which is solving the most important issues at the root so that they go away forever. The process component, which is simplifying and documenting all of your core processes so that the company's more profitable, more scalable. And it's a lot more fun to come to work every day, because it's not the Joe way or the Sally way or the Bob way, it's the VLP way, and everybody's doing it that way. And then finally, the traction component, which is having those weekly level 10 meetings, having quarterly state of the company meetings, and meeting with me quarterly for me to keep you disciplined and accountable. So when all of that is taken into account, there's a 20-question quiz that you've been taking as we go through this process. And when the scoring gets to about 80% or better across all those 6 key components, that's the point at which that a client can graduate from their need of an EOS implementer. I tell all of my clients, the happiest day I have with every client is the day that we get started and focus day. And the second happiest day is the day that they say to me, we got it. We're at 80% or better. They take the test and they're where they need to be. And they don't feel the need to have me, work with them every 90 days.
And for those who are watching this video and something piqued their interest, they said, well, maybe I've read Traction or I've heard about EOS. What do you say to some of those business owners about what they should consider implementing EOS, and just what the benefits are, I guess in a short way? This could be a long drawn out answer, obviously. But just what are some of the points that they should think about?
Do you feel stuck? Does your head ache certain days? Does your heart ache certain days? Do you feel frustrated? Are you really where you want to be? Do you feel like you're doing everybody else's job or some other people's job? Do you feel like too many people are reporting to you? Are you working a full-time job, or are you working 3 full-time jobs? All of those are indicators of stress and a need to implement EOS. So I'll take your question and I'll put a slightly different spin on it. I actually wrote an article that EOS published. It was actually a couple of years ago, and it's not for many entrepreneurs, it's not a question of do they need EOS? Do they need a system to run on, whether that's EOS or something else? Question is when. So I'll turn the question into, when should we start our EOS implementation? So I wrote this article and I said, when is the best time to start your EOS implementation? The answer is 5 years ago. Because if I had the next sentence in this article, and I am dead serious about this, the next sentence was, if I had one thing to do over in my business life, in my entrepreneurial business life, if somebody handed me a magic wand and said, Bill, you can just change one thing, that one thing would have been, in my previous 2 companies, to have implemented EOS on day 1. Not a year in, not 2 years in, not 3 years, not 5 years in, but on day 1, when when it was just you and or a couple of partners just starting to try to figure out what this company was going to be about, to try to have a vision. What's going to be the focus of this company? What are the right people? How are we going to measure this? Where are we going to go? How are we going to get there? All of that. If I and my partners in my second company, and I myself in my first company, had been clearer and better at that, then the success that I've been fortunate enough to have would have gone even farther, even faster, with a lot fewer arrows in my back.
Well, yeah, it's certainly hard, as an entrepreneur, just figuring out where the business is going, how it's going in the day to day. I mean, I think we would say it's been key in helping us communicate better, get everybody on the same page, and certainly rowing in the same direction as far as we think about it. And you've been invaluable to us as we have implemented, because we were first trying to do on our own. And I think the first time we had spoke when we were doing the interview, and then when we met and started our first session, it was eye-opening of what we really didn't understand. So I think it's, if you are considering, hey, I'm this business owner that is kind of at this crossroad, or my team doesn't feel like they're moving in the same direction, how do we get there faster, quicker, and smarter and more efficient? EOS has been key for helping us kind of to navigate that and get there.
Your experience is a common one. Companies start to self-implement, they start to make progress, but they generally, and usually pretty quickly, within 6 months or so, 6, maybe 12 months, start to level out because of 2 major factors. One is they really don't understand the tools to the depth that a professional or certified implementer understands them. And the other is that the person that is implementing EOS, that is running the implementation, if you're also a part of the leadership team, you've got history, you've got head trash, right? You've got your own head trash, and there's head trash all around the table about you and about them. And talk about a barrier to openness and honesty. That's really tough. That's why the value of a third party coming in and asking the hard questions and creating the clarity is so beneficial.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Bill. I know we can go on. This episode could be a lot longer, and maybe we'll go back and tackle some of the tools over the few years. But I want to thank you. And if you're interested in learning more about EOS, certainly you can reach out to Bill Hueter and his team. And if you enjoyed this episode, as always, we invite you to like our YouTube page and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. And thanks again, Bill. And we look forward to having you on again.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you for being a great client, and thank you for this time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Greater View. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Spotify and recommend our podcast to family and friends. To learn more about VLP Financial Advisors, please check out our website at vlpfa.com. Thanks again.
And now for our necessary disclosures. Securities and advisor services offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will be successful. The views stated in this podcast are not necessarily the opinion of Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned. Due to the volatility with the markets mentioned, opinions are subject to change without notice. Information is based on sources believed to be reliable. However, their accuracy or completeness cannot be guaranteed. Past performance does not guarantee future results.